Hello, everybody, and welcome to another conversation in our series on seeking harmony. This is part 4, and we have decided for today's topic that we are going to delve into the topic of harmonizing relationships. And I think our topic evolved out of the current world affairs with the diplomatic relations between the Ukraine and Russia, and just the sheer level of conflict that has ensued over the last, I think, week or so. And so one of the places we felt to go to was good to look into what relationships really are and how we start to see those relationships that we probably notice play out at an individual level, also play out at a collective level, and how those dynamics play out in front of us and what parallels we can draw between individual relationships and collective relationships. And so one of the things that was a standout point was how other countries in Europe are currently responding to this conflict, and also what that means for diplomatic ties between the Ukraine and the United Nations, diplomatic ties between the United Nations and Russia. We spoke last week a bit about the discipline that was applied to Russia by the G8 in terms of limiting their access to certain resources. And over the last week, we've seen a significant response by the international community to the relationship that is playing out at the moment. And an analogy that was quite fitting was just how it almost seems as if Russia, in its aggressor point of view, is the narcissistic X. And the thing that kind of stood out to me was that there's a lot of sentiment around the world right now to understand what that lay of the land was, or the landscape was in the past in terms of what was the Soviet Union and how those countries have literally unbundled that union. And so I feel like, it's almost tantamount to a divorce where things are split up and there's a fight for custody of certain things, and there's a split of certain resources. And so it is going to be a question of how do you perceive this relationship at a collective level between those two countries, and what parallels, just high level, may you have drawn when we look at that relationship in relationship to an individual relationship, as in two people as opposed to two nations. So let's open it up there. Let's look at what parallels we see between what could be a healthy relationship between two people and what couldn't be, and how that is playing out for Russia and the Ukraine, and what the so-called friends may be saying in relation to the dynamics between these two countries or complex individuals.
Well, to open it up a bit, one of the first things I thought when seeing the news, looking at the news this week, was the uncanny parallel between what we attracted with quarantine and COVID in the past few years, and what we've attracted in terms of this situation. And what I was thinking was about, it goes back to a sermon about COVID from Jeff and Shaleia, saying that the world attracted this so they could see that the response, the peace was not in like being separated and thinking only of the individuals, but in being together in a balanced way. And that we were rethinking our relationships because of COVID. And seeing how, NATO and the United Nations like almost stood up as one man to really like all throughout the week to fight against abuse, to fight against ego, was like me realizing that, okay, it's not something that you fight as individuals. Like it's not something that one single country needs to fight. It's like something where every single one of these nations has a choice to make. So that was one of the first comparisons that drew out for me. And yeah, I'm interested in hearing what the others felt and thought of the situation.
You said we attracted the COVID. Maybe our consciousness needed to learn how to purify ourselves. And we had this pandemic, and it was just a reminder to live more purely. In regards to Russia, well, let's say Russia is ego and a bully and isn't wanting to look at anything, but trying to take from us. And what do? Can we just stand still and be present and love the situation? That's my take on it.
I really like what Sandra shared now about Russia, kind of seeing it's the ego and standing there. I kind of have this in my relationships to the people I work with now. They live a lot in fear, and they have kind of a relationship with fear. And it is also how Russia feels also in this situation. And I have had to learn to stand up for myself, always like Sandra shared, from a place of peace. And I had to learn to sometimes, when God guided me, to say stop to abusing behavior, also on my workplace and in the relationship here. And I always had to learn to stay in this place where I feel fear, to stand up for myself. Sometimes there were days where I said to God, I don't know if I not just run away when again someone is saying something abusive or doing something abusive. I just run away, and God always guided me to stand up here and stay present with this with this fear inside of me, for standing up for myself, for saying no to a behavior from another person out of peace. And I learned to do it in a different way than in the past. In the past, I would say something and would come from an upset place or a fearful place. But God really guided me to stay strong and transform the situation from the inside out. And I learned in these relationships that it can change something, even with people who are not aware of the teaching of Jeff and Shaleia or the mirror exercise, or who are not doing inner healing work or meditation. Even such people, when I really stood up every time and again and again and again, and I stand up in peace for myself, it got better. And around me and around my presence in God and in peace and in love, they stopped doing it. And that is why I really resonated with Sandra shared now, how she sees that now, kind of when we see that Russia is kind of the ego and the bully in this situation. And like I also read already on Facebook's post that Ukraine needs to learn to stand up here. It's not the first time that Russia is doing something like that. Like Granville already shared, kind of Russia tried to force a union with a lot of countries. My mother was living in Czech Republic at that time, and this was not a nice feeling living in a country forced to be in union with someone that they didn't want it to be. And they're doing it again.
That was kind of abusive. Yeah, I was having like, as we were speaking about this topic during the week and kind of like preparing for this live, I also remember an anecdote from one of my mom's friends who was in Romania when she was a child and was under the Soviet government. And as I was listening to everyone share, it feels like there's also, like again, like Sandra was sharing, and this is something that has played out in every relationship at an individual level. When we encounter ourselves in front of an abuser, we have a choice to remain in that relationship or not. And I can speak of this also like as a personal experience. And since societies are based on people gathering together, it's very easy to see how the individual can be translated into the social, like a group dynamic. And I felt interesting because what I was listening and what came up was Europe already kind of like decided to put a stop to this after the Second War. That's when they started moving towards the European Union. But right after the Second War was the Cold War, was the East versus the West, was communism versus capitalism. And it seems like Russia hasn't quite moved through that experience of whether they want to continue playing things from this side or perspective or energy. And it's no wonder that kind of like Ukraine is kind of like in the middle. And suddenly pretty much every single country in Europe has been backing Ukraine to the best of their abilities in standing up against this abusive energy. And of course, like Sandra was sharing, this is an energy that has to play out because there has to be a clarity in a choice, such as individuals. So do countries have to choose? Do we stay in these abusive relationships like it was kind of like in the past too? And at the individual level, I was remembering when marriages were by force. And like women will like be forced into a relationship and you have to stick with your husband because of the family or blah, blah, blah. And there wasn't really honoring the desires of both people. Like a relationship is basically, as you were asking this question at the very beginning, Granville, a relationship is at least two people coming together and seeing if they want to go to the same place and kind of like have a dialogue that goes somewhere. And it feels like, yeah, Ukraine has made it very clearly. They want a different relationship, and Russia was not giving that. So like at the individual level, it works the same. When a relationship, both parties don't meet on a middle ground, there's not much left than just go on separate ways and do our best to respect each other's choices. So yeah.
What you shared is like spot on based on the history of these countries, because like it's basically the remaining patterns of Cold War playing out, mixed with the choice of like everyone. And yeah, when NATO was created, Russia accepted it on the condition that they did not expand east in Eastern Europe. But it was a time where the countries didn't have a say and the freedom to choose. And when they clearly expressed the desire to be in that safe alliance, Russia got mad. But still, like, it didn't really take these countries and ex-satellites choices into account. And so it started having more and more aggression, and the more aggressive it got, like the more Ukraine got closer to NATO, and it started using this rhetoric of like, well, Russia was born on the territory of Ukraine, so they belong to us, or like, this is the, I think Putin said that at the beginning of the week, this is, these are the values of family and harmony that the US is attacking by preventing me from getting into Ukraine. And so basically it's like when you're in an abusive family relationship, or exactly like when you have a narcissistic partner, it's like gaslighting. And some people believe in this gaslighting, some don't. They clearly see the bullshit. But like looking at it, like it's clear that the aggression is coming even in this war, and has always come from Russia, and the rest is response. And the countries are saying, no, we have a right to freedom, and we have a right to choice, and their friends, their group of support, are there to support them. And like it's kind of us doing inner work. Like a coach is there to support you. He cannot make the choice for you. They cannot make the choice for you, but they can guide you into making the choice yourself. And so, yeah, that's one other view of a relationship there. And it puts emphasis on how much these countries did not have the freedom to choose for themselves before. And I think that's what they're appealing right now.
Yeah, Yoreen, I think you've touched on a very important component in that energy of the choice, and in that energy of, you can lead the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. So everybody can stand up and say, actually, Russia's the aggressor. But at the end of the day, the Ukraine has to make the choice to be sovereign and to honor their sovereignty. And that choice then becomes reflected in their relationships, not only with other countries, but at some point, Russia has to accept that my sovereignty doesn't fall away because you choose not to accept it. In fact, I feel like the energy of upheaval, it's what's playing out here. So yes, we can listen to components of Putin's rhetoric in terms of, you are getting in the way of family values. But then we have to ask him the question of, well, actually, is respect not a family value? Is it not an individual value? Is it not a national value? And why do you not respect the choice of the Ukraine to be sovereign and democratic and independent? And does my choice as a country of independence in any way go against your choice of independence? And is there a common path here? Because a lot of the time, I feel like there's conflicts that we do not harmonize because we actually don't listen. It literally goes back to something that Alexandra and Laurentia shared in their past sermon this last Sunday, in terms of understanding being the core of building that relationship, listening to understand. What are they not listening to at the moment? And what is being called for? Because there's always a call. And one of the things I want to share with you is that, I used to be a Sunday school teacher in the past. And one of the things that really stood out for me was a lesson I learned from my pastor at the time. And he said to me, just pay attention to the kids in your class. Because the kids that need the most love ask for it in the most unusual ways. And so my question here is, what type of love is Russia asking for? And is all this discipline the type of love that they need right now?
It's a very interesting way of putting it. You know what reminded me as I was listening to you? It seems like a parent who doesn't want their child to grow up and become independent. And it's like, as you were asking, like, what type of love is Russia asking for? Maybe there's some underlying fear of like losing sovereign. I cannot pronounce this word, my apologies. If anyone can jump in and help me, that would be very much appreciated.
Just keep going.
Thank you.
You're almost welcome.
And this kind of tends to be one of the energies underlying pretty much almost any war. Is like, oh no, this piece of land is kind of like running away from me. Let's do something to prevent that from happening. And like becoming independent, it's very natural at this point. Like we do it as individuals too. There's a point where it actually gets really uncomfortable to not grow up and become mature. And the same process will be taking place with countries as well. Clearly, this is the situation when somebody doesn't understand or doesn't honor the other party's choice. There has to be a very clear boundary, and discipline is always, as Chef and Shaleia share, and I remember Chrissy repeating this, it's very subtle at first. But when that discipline gets disrespected over and over again, it has to be louder.
Exactly what I experience in the relationships in my workplace. You do it, like you say, sell. And then when it's not like, when they are not listening, then it has to be louder. And sometimes I had to be very loud there. And but I feel I heal here and I grow up a part inside of myself where I didn't like to look in the past. And as I made the choice to grow up and become a mature person, God guides me to heal all these places in my heart. And that is kind of like Granville shared, is this, what is this relationship and what is Russia asking for? Yeah, also, even they seem like the big country, they have to grow up too, because not respecting someone else's choice and independence is not, a grown-up person is not doing that. Respect is a skill from a very mature person. And so they are in truth, they are also calling for love. And as they don't know how to ask for it, and they want to be part of the world in a positive way in truth too, they don't know how to do it. But this way is not
clearly it's not the way.
Exactly.
Now I was kind of like feeling into it, and of course they are asking for love, and when somebody sets the boundary and says, okay, I've grown up here, you have to meet me in this place now, and it involves a change in that relationship. And of course this can be scary. Like, this is something that, to set a very clear example on an individual level, we are experiencing with our son. He's a 9-year-old boy, still tries to behave like a baby. This is clearly uncomfortable for everyone.
Mhm.
There's an underlying fear that as he grows up, instead of seeing that the relationship changes and evolves and even becomes better,
Yes.
there's a fear that the relationship is going to be lost. And I'm not going to say that this is what like Russia as a collective is going through, but could be a way of looking into it. And of course, this way of relating to Ukraine and the rest of the world is not really giving them what they want. Actually, it's taking away what they want, which is having more relationships in divine truth, of course. But yeah, sometimes the contrast has to play out for everyone to get really clear and like really learn. Setting boundaries is a lesson that we all as people and as a collective community have to move through. And of course, sometimes when you're learning, it always gets darkest before the sun rises.
I also think that something that's probably being quite reflected even just in our community is the almost lack of acceptance of discipline sometimes. And I like how you touched on that, Deb and Paco, in terms of that at the beginning, discipline is subtle. But there also comes a point at which subtlety is wasted on certain people. And I feel like Russia's reflecting that pattern to us. You know, there's a very simple adage about if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? You kind of have to call it a duck. So, you know, at this point, you kind of need to look at this relationship from a very different perspective. Like, we understand the core of feeling. We understand the core of hurt that's actually being played out. But I feel like the next level of it is the core of Ukraine's choice. Like, the world wouldn't be supporting Ukraine in this way if Ukraine in and of itself did not say, we will not accept this. We will not tolerate this. And so the power of Ukraine's choice here has been that there has been a collective shift in how they are being supported at the moment. And we see it play out in our own lives. You make a choice, you solidify that choice, you live in that choice, and your reality shifts. And so you can't be in this type of relationship and expect everybody else to stand up for you when you don't stand up for yourself. And I feel like that's something that we can solidify in terms of understanding how to actually harmonize relationships, in that you love yourself and you choose to set a very clear boundary, and your reality shifts. We have seen it play out at a very personal, individual level. Well, at least I have. I have seen it play out very much in that people seem to vibrate out of my reality as I make those new choices. And so this linger longer energy that Russia is playing out in that relationship starts to just feel like almost that almost narcissistic energy of trying to hold on when there's nothing more, because the choice to have a healthy relationship is not being respected. And, you know, like I've seen it play out. I've heard that even with Jeff and Shaleia's teachings, that there's a point at which, you know, I use the very simple, light example of if it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's a duck and you have to call it a duck. But there's the other point of you kind of need to actually, at some point, meet an arsehole where they live. And that might look like aggression. It might look like the choice to walk away. It might look like the choice to fight. You know, it's kind of what is the situation calling for and what's the best solution at the end of the day. Because, again, subtlety after a while tends to be wasted. Also, the other energy is you can only say something for so long before you have to actually take a tougher stance, before you have to act more decisively than subtlety.
Well, I think you're explaining the type of response, how you can respond to someone else. Like if someone is playing tough and being aggressive, you can respond by buying them flowers and hugging them. You kind of have to first say no and then, like, as Chrissy says, quote from Tifas, respond in their language. And yeah, because that might be the only thing they understand. And it's true for every relationship, whether you're like, I want to say every relationship, but like whether you're raising a kid or putting discipline on and boundaries on your parent. Like, for example, if mom is behaving controlling and crazy, you're not gonna hug her and say like, oh, come here, it's okay. Like, you're gonna say, well, no, I don't accept that. And it's not because you're my parent, hint, hint, but you have a right to my liberties. And yeah, I think like Paco said, like the big countries have or are learning that it's not because you parented someone else that you have a right to, well, you have a right to invade and to be aggressive. So yeah, we're just leveling. We're finally leveling our response to Russia. I guess we always have, like, since 2015, they've made threats and we've put discipline and sanctions, and they broke the laws of, you know, diplomacy and war, and so we're responding by defending.
We kind of like have to just be really firm in our position, because it feels to me like they're the bully and they're trying to wear us down. And we don't want to be worn down. We want to stand for love and peace. But at the same time, we can't be intimidated by their tactics. And they might seem intimidating.
Yeah, I agree with the intimidation tactics, and that's something that plays out in my relationships, definitely. But just understanding that I have that power in me and that I do have a voice, even if it's shaky, and I can speak up. And then one person does it, the rest of us do it, and that's that one consciousness. So
So I don't know if you guys have seen the post that I shared with you, where in the social impact channel, where nearly 140 delegates from the United Nations human I think it's what, let me not get it wrong. I want to just say, I want to actually tell you what it is, because I thought human resources was like, no, that doesn't sound right. So I just want to tell you what it is. Yes, so like from the United Nations Human Rights Council, 140 delegates across 40 nations actually just walked out on the Russian foreign minister addressing the United Nations Human Rights Council. So yeah, I just wanted to get your sentiment and your feeling of what that is a reflection of right now, or what it could be a reflection of. So yeah, it's not a loaded question. It's kind of just like, what do you think of it? Like, what is it indicating to you?
I'm sorry, was someone going to speak? Russia can't stand alone and be alone and not communicate and interact with the world. They need us too. I don't know what to tell you, except that those people who walked out are just trying to tell Russia, look, we're not going to take this anymore. We don't agree with you. So at some point, Russia needs us, and they need resources, and they need money. They need everything that the world has to offer Russia. But at some point, they're going to have to learn to compromise and do good, do right. But that's what I take, all the people not being at the meeting there.
It's a very clear sign that this is not how we are going to have a relationship with you anymore. And like we were speaking before, sometimes that's the only card left for you. It's just to walk away from a relationship that clearly is not meeting you anywhere in between. And the choice is always there.
I also want to mention the fact that their foreign minister was there in a human rights council. Already puts a hole through their bullshit, because last week they were all like, we're gonna act, and everyone's standing in our way, some kind of stuff for the consequences, and it's kind of like this invincible tough act that they were putting. But it's clear that in this world now, with what we have built as a world order, there's no possibility to act alone. And so they also will need to respond from the international laws and treaties they have broken over the past months and years. And yeah, it was a pretty impactful, powerful response. Like, who would have thought, like, 140 delegates walking out of a council? Like, it's unheard of, and yeah, it just strengthens that feeling of warmness for me. Acting as one, that's where like the individual choices show that they were harmonizing into a collective choice. I think it's quite good.
I also think it's quite interesting if you look at the dynamics of a relationship. And I mean, let's just take it, for lack of a better place, take it to a school playground. And you stand up to the bully. The bully does lose ground. They lose a level of support. And I feel like Ukraine has literally done a significant amount of work to say, we will not be bullied. The message of a president standing on the front lines with his staff, with his soldiers, is also for me a whole nother precedent. Like, I don't recall ever seeing that kind of thing in the history of actual physical military conflict. And I may be wrong. And so if you guys know of any examples where that has played out in history, it could be quite interesting. Yes, we know about it in terms of, for instance, very early conflicts where we seem to see kings and tsars and emperors even on those front lines with their staff. But in more recent history, to actually see a president saying, I will not seek asylum, I will stand with my soldiers, and if I die, I will die with my soldiers. It sends a very powerful message. And it's just, to me, the clear energy of, I will not be bullied, and I will not have my people bullied. And so even the power of that choice starts to shift how Ukraine is supported. And it starts to shift how their relationships are harmonizing with the rest of the world. I've just recently read that there's almost a speed application for them to become part of the United Nations. You know, it's kind of, like you said, Doreen, there's a lot of unheard of or unprecedented shifts in the space of this conflict that we may not have ready examples of, but that are going to determine the direction of relationships at an international level going forward.
There's actually one example that comes to my mind. It's nothing to do with Ukraine and Russia. This actually happened back in January in Mississippi. All of the African-American senators of Mississippi staged a walkout when the bill for banning critical race theory was passed. And that showed that, you know, the African-American citizens were standing in their power, especially with, you know, the intensity of Jim Crow that has transpired in Mississippi in the past. That's what came to my mind as an example.
And I think that it's good that you share that, for the reason that it starts to show a greater shift at the collective level, a shift of solidarity, a shift of partnership within some very unusual circumstances. Because let's be honest, we wouldn't have thought, and I wouldn't have thought, that this type of conflict would play out to the level that it did. I mean, we've seen the Palestinian conflict, we've seen some other things happening, but we haven't really, I can't, and I may be wrong, I can't almost remember it playing out at such a significant level. And that's the significance of that shift then requires a much more significant response. And we're seeing the shift in the power of those responses and in the collective nature of those responses. It feels like there's, and again, it goes back to the point that Yoreen was making at the probably quite early in our conversation, in just the energy of, we do not want this type of thing anymore. We want a different world. And whether healed or unhealed, as we would term it, there's still a call in consciousness for a greater level of healing. There's still a call in consciousness for different, healthier types of relationships. And the fact that there's such almost a unanimous response to saying, fix it, fix yourself, check yourself, says to me that there's a deeper desire for significantly healthier relationships at a significantly more collective level. So I just want to throw that out there and ask you guys how you feel about what is shifting in humanity's desire around relationships, or what you perceive to be shifting.
While you were talking, I thought of something, the fact that the UN response and the fact that the US were preparing for such a long time before the conflict. In hindsight, it's making me think that country leaders, there was a discussion amongst country leaders and world organizations, because some things that have played out and the way they played out look eerily similar to the beginning of World War II. And some of the leaders probably said, like, right, okay, we do not want that. And so in saying that, I think the response and harmonization was accelerated. At least it's my feeling. And look at like the breakthroughs that have already happened because of that, like Germany unleashing their military power and Ukraine's response, and the way the president never presented as a victim, but always as a leader in his response. Like, I think that's why so many things were unheard of, because it wasn't the start of World War III. People said, like, we know, we've seen World War I and III, and we don't want a repeat. I think, and I think that's the powerful core choice that we're seeing unfold and its consequences today.
Yeah, Europe is very clear in that choice. Like whenever I was tapping into this long before even knowing the community, it was very clear to me. They do not want to repeat history. And they already know what it looks like when you start following bully, basically.
The last question Granville shared immediately popped a quote from Paramahansa Yogananda in my mind. And it says, change yourself and you have done your part in changing the world. And Granville asked us what we are desiring in our relationships. And it's having mature relationships. And mature relationships mean that we heal and that we grow in parts inside of us, which are, like we shared already, still kind of babies. And we can do that in looking inside of us and healing these parts inside of us. And then we grow up from the inside on the outside, not so focused on the outside, like that this was Russia is doing. What was the reason in Divine Truth they are doing what they are doing? It's not okay. And it's totally okay that everyone stands up in his, her heart and says no to this energy. And it's safe to feel this energy in my heart and to say no. And when this voice gets loud, I say louder no. And I do it again and again. And I do it from a place of peace again and again. And so we stand up for a bully. I say no. And I say again no. And I will say every time no when it feels not good for me.
Yeah, it seems like the core choice that is being made, both on an individual and of course translating into a broader aspect, is we don't desire any more abuse.
Exactly.
It's like we've had enough.
No.
And like it will have to play out up until the end, until everything is harmonized. And that's part of the process. And it happens like with us in very little aspects compared to geopolitical topics, but it is exactly the same conversation. We are all having this conversation at the core.
We're all having this conversation at the core. I love it. Just wanted to say that.
I was going to say that Paco put me on a train of thought, and I was like, oh, that's good. And then I completely lost it. I was like, okay. But yes, like I think like the one thing that you shared, Paco, is the actually strong desire to have mature relationships. And the strong desire, and I mean, like for me, even in my friendships, I'm at the point where I'm like, actually, if you're not bringing some level of value to my life, it's okay for you to love me from a distance. And it's okay for me to love you from a distance. And, like I just feel like there's a lot of energy of like, and it's across lots of relations, the energy of you're not adding value here, so let's not. It's just that energy of let's not do this. And it's not a malicious energy. And as you said, it's not that energy of playing the victim anymore. Because, for a long time, what I've observed in lots of relationships, and even where I've been sometimes, that energy of carrying around your own body choke and police tape, so that, like you can just lie down and draw the border around yourself when you want the sympathy. And I just kind of feel like there's a lot of people saying, I'm not carrying that damn body choke anymore. Like no, it's heavy in my hands, it's heavy in my pockets. I don't want the body choke. I'm not the victim. I do have power here. And I feel like Ukraine has really embodied that as a nation, saying, we are not a victim. We are under very unusual circumstances, but we will stand up for ourselves. It's quite a significant shift in moving relationships and relating forward. Because the fact is, when you can stand up and say, I choose not to be the victim, I choose to have peace in my relationships, I choose to have harmony in my relationships, the universe has to conspire to give you that, because your choice is that powerful. And I feel like that's really playing out very interestingly right now. Yes, there's a significant energy of conflict, but there's also a significant energy of, actually, no, this is not okay. We don't accept it. And Yoreen touched on the response of the world. And I just feel like there was harmonization in saying, we will respond. I don't think that the world would have, many countries in the world would have been able to respond as rapidly if they had not already prepared themselves to respond in a very decisive manner. And sometimes in a relationship, overcoming fear is about preparing to respond in a decisive manner. And I just feel like it's really playing out at a collective level really well. And it's kind of probably going to be the stuff of international relations textbooks going forward. It has to go down in history in one way or another. It has to shape history in one way or another. It's too significant not to.
We've already been through 2 world wars. I would hope and think that we're not going to go through a third one. I think we're all advanced for that.
Sandra, I really hope that we are more advanced than that. You know, like that is the hope. You know, like yes, we're very much observing it right now. There's a lot of energy of not being a non-participant observer anymore, and it's literally the simple energy of, I can't stand around and wait for everybody else to defend me. I kind of need to defend myself. I kind of need to be in the space of owning my power. And I feel like there's a lot of nations reflecting those individual choices as well. So yeah, with that, I'd just like to check in with everybody. If you have any last thoughts that you want to share as we wrap up our conversation. Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. So yeah, thank you to everybody for joining us today. Thank you to the team for the conversation. And thank you to all of you for following our conversation in the series on Seeking Harmony. We'd like to invite you to like and subscribe to our Church of Union YouTube channel, where you will find all our previous conversations that have happened in our Unionism Spiritual Discussion Group. And we look forward to seeing you again next week as we progress the conversation. Thank you, everybody.